Even as recently as 5 years ago, there weren't many product or training options for cosmetic tattoo removal. Of course, products and homemade solutions were available to technicians, but cosmetic tattoo removal wasn't really a thing. Cosmetic tattooing was considered more of an enhancement then than the makeup look that's become more popular over the years. And the pigments available to cosmetic tattooists have needed to change too. However, it's unfortunate to say that over the last few years, the need to lift, improve, and remove bad or unwanted pigment or skin that's just saturated full of pigment has grown to such an extent that technicians are now actively looking for removal training. Clients are still a little behind, knowing that cosmetic tattoo removal is available to them, or indeed they don't even realise that they need to have removal to achieve that eyebrow design that they're looking for, such as hair strokes or ombre brows, on top of badly faded or saturated old permanent makeup. Therefore, we need to educate them both online and in person when they come in for a consultation. Tattoo removal has become such an overused and simplified term, but that doesn't really explain the ease or difficulty each client might experience during the removal process. Clients often have preconceived ideas and reactions to the removal word, so it's worth removing it from your vocabulary when talking to a client. Try using colour lifting, lightening, improving, or simply say, let's make room for more pigment. Whilst it's not a beauty treatment, tattoo removal can actually be a pleasant experience. As you'll learn about botched ink, you'll understand why. If you've had tattoo removal yourself, have a think about the process that you went through, your results and your expectations. And of course, for those of you who have not experienced tattoo removal, try to remember a beauty or aesthetic treatment that you've had that you really wanted to work. Were your expectations well managed? A huge part of a tattoo removal treatment is managing a client's expectations. And during this course, we'll teach you how to do this. And it starts by taking a thorough tattoo history from the client. I first trained in saline tattoo removal back in 2013. I was taught to use saline eye wash pods and a special fine salt called McDonald's salt. Now, I love Scotland, so McDonald's salt sounded quite distinctive and I liked it. But then I realised that McDonald's salt was the sachets of salt from McDonald's, and I thought, you have got to be kidding. But no. McDonald's salt is a fine salt with no added anti-caking agents, which you normally find in regular table salt. It's a fair comment to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I think it is. This type of saline tattoo removal, still often called salt and saline, is brutal, very painful, unhygienic, and doesn't offer the best results, even though the theory behind using salt and saline for tattoo removal is still very relevant. Unhygienic. Now, I normally catch people's attention when I say that word, but think about it. How are you going to get a pile of wet salt mixed with body fluids off of hairy eyebrows or even non-hairy eyebrows without spilling it where you don't want it? The problem is salt and saline were not intended for tattoo removal treatments. Salt's for salt. It's essentially a home treatment that's been adopted by professionals without making any improvements. There are no added ingredients to help the salt penetrate any deeper than the holes made by the tattoo machine or hand tool. If a tattoo is solid, old, deep, compacted, or scarred, results will be minimal. Skin is only dried out with salt and saline to the level the salt has implanted. Or with harder skin, there's minimal opportunity for the required skin saturation. When using salt and saline, there are no added ingredients to help minimize any inflammation caused by the treatment. So, with salt and saline, on top of it being a very uncomfortable treatment, clients are then left to manage a treated area that can look pretty inflamed and then dried out, itchy, and flaky. And all this leads to a higher risk of overgrowth of blood capillaries and scarring. This is the reality of salt and saline tattoo removal treatment. You are literally resting a wet crust of salt on someone's face. What you do is you open the skin using your needle and the saline solution. Once the skin is open, you dip a cotton bud into the saline and then you dip the wet cotton bud into the salt to get a clump of salt on the cotton bud. Then you try to balance and position the said clump of salt on the open skin without any clumps rolling into the person's eye or into their hair. After a few minutes, the area becomes wetter as the salt in the body tries to push out the salt that you're trying to get into it. Can you see the wet drop forming on her brow and beginning to roll? Now, please don't underestimate how painful this feels. My client weirdly enjoys the burn. Most clients' eyes will be watering, they'll be frowning and at risk of disturbing the salt. And as the burn continues, they will be wanting to end the treatment. And do you think they'll be returning? After enough soaking, now it's the time to get off that wet crust of salt. Trying to remove this from an area that's already sore, where there's eyebrow hair and various uneven surfaces and dips for the wet salt to roll into, and you can see why this treatment is unhygienic and potentially dangerous. My client's brows were tattooed 10 years ago. She was happy with the shape but bored of the very dark colour. She visited a permanent makeup technician but hadn't realised permanent pigment had been used on her. She's not had any top ups during those 10 years. Her eyeliner and lips were also tattooed by the same person a few years later, and she's pleased with them. And they do look good. They are also, no doubt, permanent. Over the years, I've used various types of salt and saline. I've used McDonald's salt. There's a thing called popcorn salt, which comes in little tubs, liquid salt, and even making my own basic salty solutions. It wasn't until around 2016 that specially formulated saline tattoo removal products were available to me in the United Kingdom. I was keen to try them and soon realised the difference when using a product that was intended for the job. With my experience and knowledge using salt and saline over the years, and already being a trainer and having written my own training courses, I decided to write one for saline tattoo removal, and I began training early 2017. After a time, though, I realised that I really did need to have a product of my own that I could fully endorse and ultimately take ownership of. In December 2017, I was sat at home watching one of my favourite TV programmes, Botched, with Doctors Nassif and Dubrow, and the light bulb moment of Botched Inc. and the humour of my existing company being called Beautiful Inc. got me very excited. And I think there was a delay of about 3 minutes before the Botched Inc. domain was purchased and the trademark application started. I couldn't believe they were available. We were developing and testing during 2018, and the tattoo on my thigh took a bit of punishment, and it's a shame as I like that tattoo. But thighs are thick skin, and I needed to see what would come out. And then some wonderful models who'd worked with me previously on my other removal training courses I needed to hear from them how they compared the Botched ink treatments. Botched Ink was launched in January 2019 in the United Kingdom with 4 hugely successful events, with more than 80 students travelling to our workshops in London and Manchester, becoming the very first Botched Ink certified technicians. You met me before in the introduction video. I'm Lisa Henning, the owner and developer of Botched Ink. Myself and an amazing chemist developed and manufactured Botched Ink in the United Kingdom. It's tested and approved to EU standards. Additionally, we test each batch to make sure we can, without risk, assure the 2-year expiry that's printed on the sachets. Botched Ink is already ahead of the competition. We are the only non-laser tattoo removal product packaged in single-use sachets, giving you ultimate hygiene and freshness. You have full confidence how long each sachet will last, whether you rarely or regularly offer removal treatments. There's no need to refrigerate, and Botched Ink is 1 sachet for 1 treatment, so you know exactly how much to use. In May 2019, we have one of those very proud moments. Botched Ink won the award for industry innovation at the Micropigmentation UK Conference and Awards. Our award was presented by the very lovely Sonia Anderson, the amazing host and owner of Micropigmentation UK. With more entries than ever and being up against some pretty big companies and other great products, I was super thrilled to win with Botched Ink, especially as I know the strict judging Sonia has in place and being judged by my peers. I was very excited too when the registered trademark started to come through for Botched Ink. Since relocating my business from one part of the country to another a few years ago, from Brighton at the southern coast of the UK up to sunny Stockport, which is near Manchester, I've been seeing less and less clients as Botched Ink has grown and needed my attention. However, the treatment I still love doing is dry tattooing, also known as MCA microneedling. It uses a digital tattoo machine to improve scars and stretch marks. I've offered this treatment since 2013, and much of my learning has been self-taught. I'm a curious kind of person and like asking my clients what happened during the healing and wondering why the results I expected for someone did or didn't happen. It's this one-on-one accountability that my dry tattooing clients love. We're on the results journey together. I've carried out a few thousand dry tattooing treatments over the years and written a successful and comprehensive training course. I understand working on damaged skin and how to prevent damaging the skin. I understand the risks when tattooing many different skin types and colours on the face and body. I also understand how to make healing uneventful and results more positive. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, it's with the knowledge that I've gained doing dry tattooing and various types of saline tattoo removal that enable me to know what was needed to reinvent saline tattoo removal, developing Botched Ink to be kind and safe, with consistently good results, of course, and I'll be sharing more of this during training. Botched Ink is supplied in a pack of 10 2ml single-use sachets, and 1 sachet is 1 treatment. I decided to use sachets for several reasons. Firstly, no other non-laser tattoo removal products are supplied in sachets. It's bottles, and I felt that's wrong. Who wants to have bottles of open product hanging about in a fridge or getting crusty in a drawer? When do we ever remember to write on the bottle when we opened it? Once opened, bottles of product really should have a recommended use within a certain amount of time written on them, like our cosmetic tattoo pigment bottles saying use within 12 months of opening, and bottles of foundations and beauty creams saying use within 6 months of opening. Have you seen the open jar symbol with the 3, 6, or 12 months written in the jar? That's what this means. The open jar symbol isn't a requirement or standard practice. Leaving open bottles of removal solutions hanging around and still being used many months after opening. There are hygiene risks here. If the preservative system within the solution degrades, was it designed to cope with any introduced bacteria? And importantly, how long does it remain effective after opening? As a manufacturer myself, I know that preservatives used within a product maintain the unopened product until the tested expiry date. We use single use sachets as we don't want you to keep the product after opening it. This is the major reason technicians are loving using Botched ink. Consistent results. You are always using the product with maximum potency. Botched ink single-use sachets have a 2-year expiry date that's written on each sachet, so technicians who only do a few treatments can feel as confident that the product is safe and will have the maximum effect as those technicians who carry out removal treatments more regularly. In this section, I've explained how Botched ink came about and why we do things the way that we do. Later, I'll give full disclosure of the ingredients in Botched ink and why they were chosen. There are ingredients in Botched ink that are in no other saline or non-laser tattoo removal product on the market, and I might just be a bit of a beast if anyone starts to copy. It's these ingredients that have enabled me to confidently say that Botched ink is saline tattoo removal reinvented. You'll see more of the lady in the photo as the training continues, but just look how quickly her brows dried out. Where's the redness that you might expect after a treatment? And that scabbing certainly looks minimal. This photo was taken by her husband 6.5 hours after her second Botched ink treatment, and I'm pretty sure we're looking at some pigment in that tail scab. Botched ink is gentle during treatment as it has a pH of normal healthy skin, which is around 5.5. This means for the majority of the treatment there is no burn or sting with Botched ink. A removal solution may contain no acid or alkaline ingredients, yet the product itself might have an acidic or alkaline pH. If you go too far from the body's natural pH, there will be inflammation or irritation in the body's healing response. Botched ink penetrates deeper than your needle. We added specific ingredients to the formula that really easily draws Botched ink into the skin. And this means that you don't have to overwork the product into the skin. It's one dense pass. That's all that's needed. One thing that's surprising is that Botched ink makes the skin bleed, and more than you might expect. But let the blood do the work for you, flushing up the pigment from the deeper levels and into the area that's going to dry out and heal away the pigment. But the next thing we need to do with this bleeding is we need to stop it. And this is the huge difference with Botched ink and why it's not your average saline tattoo removal solution. Botched ink is also a vascular constrictor. And we know that term from the secondary numbing creams that we use. They also stop the bleeding. Due to Botched ink being a vascular constrictor, the body's natural healing response doesn't have a chance to kick in. This means we get a thin scab, minimal inflammation, minimal irritation. And I actually mean minimal, meaning if any, not just minimal, and minimal risk of infection because, of course, salt drying out the skin, salt is a preservative. I'll be discussing this more as we continue through the course.